Welcome to The Explainer. You know, we're always talking about how much people make, but have you ever wondered about the real number? I'm not talking about salary. I'm talking about net worth. Today, we're going to dive into the numbers that truly define wealth in America, and we'll see where you might stack up.
So many of us, right? We get laser focused on our annual salary. But honestly, that's kind of like judging a whole marathon by just one step. It gives you a tiny glimpse, sure, but it doesn't tell you who's actually winning the race. The real story, the bigger picture, goes way beyond your paycheck.
So let's get this straight. Your income, that's the money that flows in. It's what you earn. But your net worth, well, that's what you actually own. It's the end result of everything you've done with that income. You can think of it as the ultimate scorecard for your financial journey.
And the formula for this? It's actually super simple. All you do is take everything you own, we call those your assets, so think cash, investments, maybe your house, and then you subtract everything you owe. You know, your liabilities, like the mortgage, student loans, any credit card debt. That final number? Bam! That's your net worth. It's a crystal clear snapshot of where you stand financially at this very moment.
Okay, before we jump into the juicy numbers, there's something really important we need to get our heads around: the difference between average and median. See, when you hear the average net worth in the US, it sounds massive, over $1 million. But why? Well, it's because that number gets totally skewed by the super rich. Think of it like putting one billionaire on a seesaw with 10 regular folks. It throws the whole thing off. The median, on the other hand, is the real sweet spot. It's the number right in the middle. Half the people have more, half have less. It's a much more realistic picture of where most people actually are.
All right, let's get right to it. What's the big number? The one that always makes the headlines.
Here it is. To be in the top 10% of all U.S. households, you need a net worth of at least $1.8 million. Yeah, it's a huge number. And what's crazy is how fast it's growing. It's shot up like 24% in just the last few years.
But does that number really tell the whole story? Not even close. That 1.8 million figure, it's a nationwide number. And honestly, it can be super misleading if you just look at it in a vacuum. You really need one more piece of the puzzle.
And that missing piece? It's your age. Because let's be real, building wealth isn't something that happens overnight. It's a long game, a journey that unfolds over decades. You just can't compare a 25-year-old who's fresh out of school with someone who's 60 and getting ready to retire. It's just not the same ballpark.
So let's break it down by age. If you're under 35, getting into the top 10% for your age group means having a net worth of around $372,000. Now, don't get me wrong, that's still a lot of money, but it feels a whole lot more achievable than that massive $1.8 million we were just talking about, right? But then, you fast forward a few decades. For someone in their late 50s or early 60s, that top 10% number absolutely skyrockets to almost $3 million. And you can see why. This is when decades of saving, investing, and the magic of compound interest really start to show off.
And when you look at all the numbers laid out like this, you can literally see the story of how wealth is built over a lifetime. I mean, look at those jumps from the 30s to the 40s and then again into the 50s. It's huge. It just goes to show you this isn't a sprint. It's a marathon, all about consistency during those peak earning years.
Okay, I get it. Those top 10% numbers can feel, well, a little out of reach, like some distant mountain peak. So let's bring things back down to earth for a reality check. What does the picture look like for the typical household?
This is where we look at the median again, that 50th percentile mark. It's the perfect middle ground. Half of the households in your age group are above this line, and half are below. This right here is what it looks like for the everyday American.
And wow, when you put these numbers side by side, it's pretty eye-opening. You can really see the huge gap between the middle and the top. For folks under 35, the top 10% has almost 10 times the net worth of the median person. And that gap, it just gets wider and wider as you get older. It's a powerful visual of how wealth concentration really ramps up over time.
So the big question is, how do people actually get there? How do you make that leap into the top 10%? Well, it turns out it's not about luck. The data shows there's a pretty clear playbook.
It all comes down to one thing: owning assets. We're not talking about just stashing cash in a savings account. People in the top 10% own things that grow in value over time. Things like retirement accounts, investment portfolios, real estate, and even equity in businesses. These are the engines that build serious wealth.
But you know, what they don't have is just as telling. They steer clear of the bad stuff, like high-interest credit card debt or big car loans that just drain their cash flow. They keep their debt low, which means their money is working for them, not the other way around.
So if you remember one thing from this section, make it this. Consistently saving in your 401k is awesome. It's the foundation and it'll get you on the right path for sure. But the thing that really separates the top half from the top 10%, the data is pretty clear. It's owning a piece of a business. That's the rocket fuel that can really accelerate the whole journey.
But here's a fascinating twist. Just because you hit these big numbers, it doesn't automatically mean you feel rich. And this gets into the really interesting psychology behind wealth.
I mean, check this out. According to one study, almost 1 in 3 households making over $200,000 a year still describe themselves as stretched or struggling. It just goes to show you, having a certain number in your bank account doesn't automatically equal financial peace of mind.
So what's going on here? Well, a lot of it has to do with things like the high cost of living, or something called lifestyle inflation, where the more you make, the more you spend. And there's always the temptation to compare yourself to the next level up, right? The top 1%. It's like you're on a treadmill. The goalposts are always moving, no matter how much you have.
And that brings us to the real takeaway from all of this. Maybe the goal shouldn't be about hitting some specific percentile. Maybe it's less about the destination and more about the journey. It's about building those solid, positive financial habits that we saw from the top 10%.
So, at the end of the day, the most important question you can ask yourself isn't, am I in the top 10%? It's simply, am I moving in the right direction? Because that progress, that forward momentum, that is the truest measure of financial success. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.